Hi again. Dwight Wilson, Armageddon now, in Chapter 8, From Sinful Alliance to Christian Realism. Wilson here has been starting to talk about the increasing enthusiasm for our Armageddon speculation during World War II and just after it. He says, Armageddon had been a particular topic of interest at the beginning of the war. The popular author Roger Bauman spoke of Russia as the controlling factor in the world crisis and of Stalin as the world's greatest statesman. This elicited the Evangel magazine's comment that the reign of Antichrist and the Battle of Armageddon were swiftly approaching. As the war spread to the Near East and Britain had 1 million troops set to defend the Suez Canal, it was said, quote, with so much military activity in and around Palestine, it seems that the nations are hastening on to their last great conflict at Armageddon, unquote. Before the Russian alliance with Britain and the United States, the Evangel was saying that Russia and her allies would march upon Palestine and there meet destruction at the hands of God and his people. But after the alliance, little was said about Russia's being defeated at Armageddon, except in theoretical discussions. During the war, a very confusing theological debate did develop about Armageddon. Was the Battle of Armageddon at Revelation 16:16 the same as the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat of Joel 3:12? Was the Gog and Magog invasion of Revelation 20 the same as that in Ezekiel 38? The Evangel asserted that the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat and the Battle of Armageddon were the same, one of the first events to follow the rapture of the church. Harry Rimmer, following Nathanael West, taught that Armageddon would not take place until after the millennium, but that the Battle of Hamon-Gog, or the Battle of the Valley of Jehoshaphat, was the first battle on the agenda. The Hamon-Gog battle is a reference to the Valley of Burial in Ezekiel 39. This did not make his stand on Russia any different from the others. They all believed that the Russians are coming, but instead of Armageddon now, it was Jehoshaphat now. Later, Lewis T. Talbot's system placed the Battle of Armageddon at the end of the Great Tribulation, which was to be the 7-year period following Russia's defeat, that defeat being imminent in his expectation also. Arno C. Gaebelein in Our Hope magazine regarded Armageddon as the next battle in God's plan, but in his view, Russia was not to be represented there. Her defeat was to come at the very beginning of the millennium. Although he did not believe Russia's invasion was to be immediate, he did believe that current events were leading toward that invasion, and that if Russia won the war, Stalin would soon be a great universal dictator. This was certainly a confusing array of prophetic interpretations. Nevertheless, they all maintained the continuity of premillenarian antipathies towards Russia, particularly as the Cold War began to develop. Within a year after the end of the war, Our Hope was lashing out against the conduct of American foreign policy toward Russia. Gaebelein's periodical was the most vocal of the major premillenarian magazines, probably because it was not an official organ of any institution. Accordingly, he was concerned only with his subscribers' opinions rather than with those of a constituency that might possibly be offended by his political stance. He was later accused of, quote, harping too much on Russia, unquote, but he vowed to continue. He pointed out that by God's grace, America had the greatest army and navy in the world, and yet by American consent, Russia had become a threat to the whole world. The Yalta Conference he declared to be a major tragedy and lamented the continued presence of Russian troops in Iran. To appease the USSR now can bring only disaster, another Munich. If the UNO is firm, UNO, United Nations Organization is firm, however, and if other powers show a willingness to back up their words with weapons, we have no doubt that Stalin will come down off his high horse, that being a direct quote from Gaebelein. At the outset of World War II, Gaebelein had prophesied that Stalin would rule the world, but now it seemed to him too early for that to happen. In retrospect, he condemned the wartime policy, quote, to form a league with a God-defying government was sin and nothing less. At about this same time, the Evangel drew its readers' attention to David Lawrence's prediction in United States News that current international trends made war possible in 10 or 15 years and probable within 15 or 20. But the Evangel found an even more imminent threat in the appeal of some Arabs for Russian assistance in the Palestine situation. Lots more to come. I'll put a link into a video we did on this much neglected, ignored text, especially ignored in Watchtower Land. The text that talks about the valley of Jehoshaphat and how Yahweh will sit to judge the nations there. This is Joel 3. The Joel 3, you might say, Armageddon scenario. Well, that word is not used there. It's the valley of Jehoshaphat. So I'll put that video in, which is actually in our Revelation playlist, comparing what Revelation has to say on the subject with Joel and other portions of Scripture. I also put a link into the Revelation playlist itself. See you next time.